Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. My channel simply is Discerning What is True. I'm going to be reading a book that I've been sharing through the last few weeks. Um, simply Rules, titled Exodus 20-3, from the book written by Zeb ben Shimon Zeb Halevi. The book is simply called Kabbalah and Exodus. And this is the real meaning of the book in a lot of ways, because it's been literalized by people thinking it's a literal interpretation when reality is not. This is the 24th chapter of the book. So we're just about halfway through the book. So thank you for being here. Today is Wednesday. And so we'll start today. It's a very cold day in South Carolina today. When I say cold, it's in 40s. And Moses said unto the people, "Fear not, for God is come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not." And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was, end quote. According to legend, the experience of being in the presence of the divine upon Mount Sinai was so great a strain that the Israelites drew back and down into a distance from the heights. Well, they wasn't prepared to see God or feel God, you see. It blew me. The experience, however, left them with a forgettable memory. Even we are told the most ignorant of their number having perceived a vision that many later saints were never to attain during life. Seen at the personal level, here are the lesser parts of the psyche retiring from a deep mystical experience into a lower state of consciousness, while Moses remains in touch with the divine at the place of the self, where the lower three worlds meet. So remember, these are stories. This is not a literal interpretation. It's not, there's a person named Moses. And let's find out what Moses means. How about that? It's in this particular book here. Coptic. Moses means Coptic, excuse me. My nose wants to run today for some reason. It's Coptic, rescue from the water. From Exodus chapter 2, verse 10. Spiritual discernment by higher perception than intellectual. Quote, rescue from its waters, end quote. That's what Moses means in the metaphysical perspective. For the Lord says that the Israelites were told they could return to their tents and re-enter into conjugal relations, while Moses was told, "Stay thou with me," end quote. Oral tradition adds that this flavor of intimacy granted Moses a clarity that no other prophet was to possess. This was because he was fully awake during his revelations. Here is the difference between unconscious intuition that perceives flashes of light and full moments of lucid consciousness, which relate to a whole spiritual picture. In Kabbalah, they are defined as the lesser and greater states of prophecy. An example of the former is Saul, who had visions, that is, but was unconscious during their manifestation, based upon 1 Samuel 10:10. This is all esoteric work here, folks, okay? While the people retired to resume normal life, Moses held the direct connection between the divine and the human worlds. This began the second phase of the Mount Sinai initiative, say. It is detailed in the rules that arose out of the 10 great laws of the Decalogue. These regulations came to be called the Book of the Covenant. The Book of the Covenant is in biblical legend by Moses, saying that from this time on, Israelites were no longer ignorant. The meaning of the statement is that no action should be performed without its result being considered. Significance of this was to have a profound effect upon the checkered history of Israel, in that in periodical exceptions and rejections of divine law have shown the rest of the humanity that while spiritual knowledge means privilege, it also means responsibility. It was to demonstrate this principle that Israel was selected to be held in the world's eye, in order that there should be no misunderstandings of the 10 commandments when applied to everyday life. The Book of the Covenant sets out a series of examples of correct conduct to the untrained eye. The text from Exodus 21 to Exodus 22:19 seems to be no more than an exercise in legislation. It is not. What is being shown is the application of the divine principles of justice and mercy based upon a knowledge of the laws that govern creation. Thus, for example, quote, if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod and he died under his hand, he shall surely be punished. And it has in a bracket saying, or revenged, in brackets. This is not the harsh law the Old Testament is supposed to be famous for, but a recognition of cause and effect. The crucial word is surely, end quote. This does not mean a man ought to be punished, but that by the law of cosmic balance, it is inevitable if the sephirah of justice is to correct the injustice and bring existence back into equilibrium. The rule, quote, not to vex a stranger nor oppose him, end quote, but have compassion upon him, quote, for ye were strangers in the land of Egypt, end quote, relates to aiding the seekers after truth, innocents, and those who are confused by the world. One does not take advantage of them. Likewise, the regulation about money lent to the poor is concerned with inner matters. It should not be used to have a hold over them or be lent for a gain. This kind of wealth is given to support the weak and not to be corrupted, or as often happens when priestcraft enters. The latter part of the Book of the Covenants is more direct, but just as deep. For example, thou shalt not follow the multitude that do evil, end quote. This means do not place oneself under the laws that govern large masses, which are forever subject to the ebb and flow of fashion, mindless entertainment, economic gains, politics, and war. Evil in this context is godless activity. A later great teacher in the same tradition said the same thing in the words, quote, be in the world, but not of it. Another verse varies or warns, I should say, against corrupting justice in favor of a person who is poor but wrong. The truth must come first. This is a warning on the weakness of excessive hesed or mercy. In another verse, one is advised to rest not only oneself on the Sabbath, but one's servants and animals, for all created things must have a period of recreation. This is a profound appreciation of cosmic principles as applied to life. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of something that just popped in my head here. There are those who are what I call the church I was last in, the major one, was a Presbyterian church. There were those who had what I would call the idea of the Sabbath was you just went home, you ate and spent time with your family and you kind of rested. I got in trouble because of that, because simply as I was was a day for me simply is to do recreational type of things. And so I organized a group of guys and I think girls to go play softball on a Sunday. And I was recommended by a particular guy later on in the week. It again reveals how people misunderstood the scriptures. You see, I had freedom to do that. I was not doing anything evil, so to speak. This is how they took it. You see, it's the Lord's day. Okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying in some ways, but this is how they kill the spirit in many people also. Someone who is self-righteous. If that's your choice, fine. You can do whatever you want to do. The way I look at it today simply is that, but this was the way they were interpreting it. See, they were looking at the literal interpretation of the Sabbath. That's what they were doing. I grew up in a home that way also, that my dad would make sure that everything was bought on a Saturday before, like groceries, gasoline for the car for the next week, that type of thing. You would never go doing anything on Sunday to buy anything. Okay? It's pretty much a Southern thing type of thing. So anyway, I've gotten off the tangent here. In the closing verses of the book, instructions is given upon religious pilgrimages. These are 3 periods set aside every year for journeys of the spirit. Okay, it didn't say anything about the body, it just said the spirit. Outwardly, these national celebrations are related to the seasons so that a cosmic aspect comes into these periods of spiritual reflection. On the individual level is the daily practice of ritual prayer and contemplation at dawn, noon, and evening. These times of meditation bring the individual and the universe into relationship and remind one of the source of existence. The Book of the Covenant ends with the statement that the Lord will, quote, send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee in the place where I have prepared, end quote. To the Kabbalists, this is the interior connection with the tradition. I think that's it for that particular chapter. Although it the tree of life. It's the very eye up here, the very top of the tree, and you're coming down here. What we call piece was called God of Israel, which is called them called the place of meta M-E-T-A. That is the crown of spirit. Or it's also on the right hand side called the beauty of divine. The next step is, which is called seventh heaven, in the presence. The 6th heaven is considered what we call sanctification. The next one is called the 5th heaven, which is called holiness, as it drops down. Then there are what they call places of upper worlds, which are called the kingdom of divine, the beauty of heaven, and the crown of paradise. This is called the place of upper worlds, the 3 upper worlds, I should say. 4th heaven is right below that, is considered with God. Below that is called the 3rd heaven, which is called sincerity. The 2nd heaven is called purity. And then we go down to what we call the 3 lower worlds meet at Mount Sinai. So this is where they met. This is the 1st heaven, which is called devotion. Below that is the children of Israel. And right at that point below that is called the camp. But there is a barrier between Mount Sinai, as we spoke up here just a second ago. The children of Israel were not on Mount Sinai. They were below. Remember that. And the camp was even further away, you see. So there is a barrier there. As we go down to the area where the camp was, we get an illustration of what is called the desert. And then the last part simply is called the lower world. So with their camp at the foundation of the ego, the Israelites ascend to the foot of Holy Mountain. Here where the 3 lower worlds meet, they stay below the barriers while the elders of the Psyche and Moses go on up. Okay, so this is all internal within ourselves. At the level of the 4th heaven, The elders wait at the crown of formation, where they glimpse through the beauty of creation the kingdom of emanation, into which Moses goes to commune with the divine. And just remember that Moses is just, he's not, Moses not is a real, it's not a real entity here, okay? This is all, in some ways, like a riddle. You see, you're trying to you're trying to figure out what is the riddle here, you see. So thank you for being with me today. Appreciate you listening. Hope that you can see these little snippets of what this gentleman was trying to share to us. This was written back some of it was written in 1960s and 70s, and some of it was written back all the way back to the 1930s and 40s. So we'll stop here, and we'll come back in a few minutes or maybe a little later and share another particular chapter. Thank you for being with me, and you take care.